Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. The title of today's talk is Quantum Leap. We've been using the word quite a bit lately, but quantum leap is sometimes things in life pick up so fast they've been headed to a certain point. And then all of a sudden, they just take a big step forward, a quantum jump or a quantum leap. Also politically, it comes a time when certain things have also been coming together, something's been happening in the environment, and sometimes they say there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. So there's a lot of sayings related to things of that nature. When in Africa, they used all Africans knew what the drums were saying, but the white man would say, "What do the drums say?" You know, you remember the old movies that he was beating the drums. But the drums always had a message, especially sometimes there was ceremonial drums, you know, we just partied and having a good time. And sometimes marriage drums, it's all kind of things. Sometimes drums of danger. You know, the white man is in the environment. Something like that. And the drums go all the way down. There ain't no limit to how far they can go. They're going all the way down. And each one, no matter what tribe, if it's a certain area, it could be hundreds of miles in the area, the drums would carry on because the people in the other village would pick it up, the people in the village up here, so it's going out. And it's giving a message. That type of environment exists right now. That type of environment exists right now, and we picked up on it for serious when they martyred Qasem Soleimani. That has been, that's one of the reasons I haven't been back to California, and technically I keep saying I'm going back, but I don't know when I'm going back. Because the messages keep coming, and you'll understand a little more. Does anybody know when we talked about the unity of Uthmaniyya, the Ottoman Empire, or the reunification of Uthmaniyya, Ottoman Empire, reunification of Safavid dynasty, that was in Iran, and the reunification of the Mughal Empire, that was India. That was a time in the world when those three dynasties, or whatever you want to call them, they held sway in the world. And the Ottoman Empire when the Ottoman Empire really spread and it hit the map real big, it was 1453 when they captured Constantinople. We can kind of remember in our history books, if we do, Constantinople was big. When the Turks, when the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, that cut off the travel of other Europeans directly through that area, because that's a choke point. And so that's when the global search for other ways around Constantinople or Istanbul. Now you have to remember, think of your history. Columbus sailed ocean blue in 1492. What happened the same year? 1492. The Spanish kicked the Moors out of Spain that same year, 1492. Remember, we're talking about the 1400s. Around that same period, Vasco da Gama started his circumambulation of Africa. So he used to sail ships down, there on Portugal and Spain are right there across from Africa. And so everybody knew Africa, but they didn't know what it really looked like, you know what I mean? So he took ships and he'd go down so far, load up a slide and go on. Pretty soon, he went all the way around Africa. That's why you have the old Portuguese colonies was Angola, that's on the west side of Africa. He went around to Mozambique, Musa bin Bake, and that's where the old Portuguese colonies, they were 500 years old. In those days, that's 50 years ago. They was 500 years old then. What was they looking for? Remember the great thing about trying to find a way to the east by going west. That's when the whole idea about the world was round. Now, the Muslims knew the world was round a long time ago. They estimated that the earth was 20,000, circumference of the earth was 20,000 miles. Of course, it's 24,986,000, something like that. So they say it's 25,000 square miles. It's 25,000 miles around the earth. So during that period, this was a quantum leap in the historical process. The victory that we had at Constantinople, the seeds of our greatest victory was the seeds of our greatest defeat. The seeds of our greatest victory was the seeds of our greatest defeat. Because the Ottoman Empire, you ever heard of sick man of Europe? That's what they call the Ottomans. So from 100 years before the Ottoman Empire fell, technically it joined the Germans in 1918 and 1914 in the war against the rest of Europe. And the Germans and the Ottomans lost. In 1924, they destroyed the Caliphate, and they brought in Westernism, 100%. They thought, we done lost to the West, so we might as well join them. So they cut off all wearing of Muslim clothing. They started calling me a Don in Turkish. They got rid of the Uthmani script, all the old writings past 100 years ago was all in Ottoman script. It was all in what they was in Arabic. It was in the Turkish language, but the script was Arabic. And in those languages, they have the Arabic script, but they have a few extra letters. So if you look in Urdu, if you look in Persian, Farsi right now is written in Arabic script, but it has a couple of letters, like they don't have a P in Arabic. So they said Bepsi Cola. And one of the guys was reading a sign, it says, bark outside, park outside, visitors park outside. And he was asking me, what does it sign, bark outside mean? I said, bark outside. I said, I don't know. Maybe they got dogs and they want them to bark. He said, no, bark. He was trying to say park. Or Bepsi Cola, right? So in Farsi, they have a P. And a P is just like, I think the P in Farsi and Urdu is just like the B in Arabic, but it's got 3 little dots at the bottom. So they have about 4 letters that they don't use in Arabic, that they don't have, that they have in their language. So they substitute it looks just like Arabic except a few dots that they put. The point I'm making was the great victory of the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, at Constantinople, which later became Istanbul, was the seeds of our greatest defeat. Why? Because the Europeans were all there in Europe. And they went out exploring the world, a great exploration. So Columbus, he said, well, his idea what the world was round, right? So he took off from Spain and just went on out in the ocean. And they kept on going, and pretty soon they discovered the islands. They called the people down there Indians because they thought they was, right? And then Vasco da Gama from Portugal, right next to Spain, went back then in Arabic they called oranges Portugal, from Portugal, because that's where they came from, Portugal and Spain. So the name of an orange is Portugal, from Portugal. But anyway, that's just a little added something. So he went all around Africa. And he, of course, drew his maps. So now they look what Africa look. They know what Africa looks like. So the Portuguese first went down into Africa and they took parts of Africa, right? And then later on, the British and the French came. Now, what makes this important is that since the Inquisition had started around 1492, they got rid of Jews and Arabs, The Jews went over to Morocco, and a few of them went to Palestine. But none of the Muslims came over here because they were exiled. I mean, they was having it hot. But you'll see names like Umar Torrijos from down there. You'll see one of the leaders down in Central America, his name is Nasrullah, the help of Allah. It's just clearly what, so there is some remnants of it, but the Muslims as a whole did not share in the Western. There's nobody over here that the Turks sent out as colonial people to colonize any part of the world. And everywhere everybody else went, remember, Spain used to control the Philippines and all those areas. The Dutch came and they took Malaysia, Indonesia, and all of those places, right? And when the Dutch colonized Africa, they brought over slaves from Indonesia and Malaysia. And think about South Africa, they have tombs of saints all around Cape Town and those places. You know why? Because the Malays came there as slaves, and they were Muslims, and they rebelled. And they fought. And they fought hard. That's why they call them their Muslim saints buried around South Africa. And that's why you'll see names like Umar Hendricks. South Africans, they're Muslims. Because their names are mixed with, the Dutch and all those people. Right now, today, you can see those names, and you wonder, how did he get that name? Well, that's how they got their name. the point is this. The Ottomans concentrated on the conquest of Europe. And that's why they went all up into Bulgaria and all that, what they now call Yugoslavia. And they concentrated on those areas. And in one of the big cities, the Turks had a thing of digging under cities, digging under the walls. And believe it or not, you know, the bakers get up early in the morning. And the bakers heard digging, you know, under the walls. So the bakers alerted the whole city that the Turks are coming under, that they're digging under there, right? You ever go to the bakery and you see a croissant, a crescent? So the bakers, to make fun of the Muslims, made a crescent. That's where it comes from, a croissant. Croissant in French, in French, is crescent. So every day we're eating the flag of the Muslims and they're making fun of us. So the bakers, to celebrate the victory in 1689 or somewhere around there, 1686, the crescent. Yeah. Here's what we're doing. We're collecting a lot of historical patterns for now. That's the beauty about history, when you can pick up on trends, repetitive trends, or an idea whose time has come. We've been talking about the reunification of the empires, the three Muslim empires. But today we want to specifically talk about the reunification, or at this point, the cooperation between Iran and Turkey. The reason, now it's going to be difficult with Turkey, because Turkey has always been trying for 70-something years to be a part of Europe. But what we have to convince Turkey is it's better to be a leader of Muslims than a slave of Europeans. You ever notice no matter what Turkey do, they won't let them get all the way in. They'll use them as a strategic thing against Russia, right? But they'll never let them in Europe all together. They got hundreds and thousands of Turks in Germany making cars and all of that, but they still are not an essential part of Europe. They're part of NATO, but they're not part of the European Union. There's a quantum leap going on right now, and we're going to discuss it right here today. The first part of that quantum leap is Turkey rejoining or cooperating with Iran. There's hundreds of thousands of Turks in Iran, because each country over there, they have a little piece of each ethnic group, and actually a lot of the leaders in Iran are Turks. And at home, sometimes they speak Turkish. The Rahbar is Turkish. Many of the ulama are Turkish. Many of the big ulama are Turkish. Technically, they speak Farsi and all that. They're Iranians. There's a big group that's Kurds. What we're going to talk about today relates to have anybody ever heard of Salahuddin Ayyub? Salahuddin Ayyub. White folks call him Saladin or something. Saladin. Yeah. Salahuddin Ayyub. Salahuddin Ayyub was a Kurd. from Iraq. He was a sultan in Egypt. He had to unify all of those people in that region under the sultanship of Egypt to do what? To reconquer Palestine. Yeah, that's what he did. He's not a perfect man. Remember, we're not dealing with perfect people. We're dealing with human beings. But what he did was he rescued Palestine from the Christians. You ever seen some Lebanese and some Lebanese, a few Syrians, but a few Palestinians that are technically white? Technically white. Light, got blue. There's some, when the Christians was there. Of course, you don't never see the black Palestinians, do you? The black Palestinians is a bigger number than the white. I mean, Palestinians. If we were just sitting around them and didn't say nothing, they would know we wasn't Palestinian. Because they're black in Palestine right now. And why you don't hardly see them you have to see a special program on them. And then you'll say, my goodness, there's black Palestinians? And don't talk about black Iranians. In Bandar Abbas, I was down in Bandar Abbas for a while. In those days, I do just like I do now, except it's a little slower. I'd run on the beach. And I would look at all the fishermen. All the fishermen had these carts with bicycle wheels on them that they kept their boats on. They would push the bicycle, the little launching pad out in the water, right? And then push the boat off and they would go out fishing. All in that area. Most of them were black. So it was one little kid, I'd say about 10 years old. They pushed the boats off and his job was to pull it back and he was just yanking with it. And he said, I gave him help. I was running on the beach. And then he just ran out, Kali Mamnoon, in other words, thank you very much. And he just ran on. He never thought he thought I was from there. But you know what? That was a scene. This was a Revolutionary Guard. He was black, and they was taking me to another island to see